Look around you. Really look. The city never sleeps anymore. Neither do we. The screens glow in every window, in every pocket, behind every tired pair of eyes. They promised us this would make life easier. They said technology would bring us closer together, make us happier, give us peace. But here we are, more connected than ever, and somehow more alone than we've ever been. I want to tell you a story tonight. It's not the story they tell in the tech conferences or the glossy commercials. It's the story we live every day, but rarely stop to notice. It's about how we traded our peace for progress, and how most of us didn't even realize we were making that trade. Think back to just 20 years ago. Remember what it felt like to be bored? I mean, really bored. When you had to sit with your thoughts for a few minutes. When waiting for a bus meant watching the world go by. When having dinner meant talking to the person across from you, not scrolling through the lives of strangers. We called that slow living back then. Now we call it wasteful. Progress. What a beautiful word. It sounds like hope, doesn't it? Like moving forward, getting better, reaching for something higher. The inventors and entrepreneurs, they painted us pictures of the future. Smart homes that would know what we needed before we asked. Cars that would drive themselves while we relaxed. Computers that would handle all the boring work so we could focus on creativity and connection. They weren't lying exactly. The technology works. The homes are smart. The cars are learning to drive themselves. The computers do handle a lot of the boring work. But they forgot to mention what we'd lose along the way. Every revolution has casualties. The Industrial Revolution took our clean air and quiet countryside. The Agricultural Revolution took our nomadic freedom. And this digital revolution, it took something harder to measure, harder to mourn, because we barely noticed it slipping away. It took our ability to be present. Watch people on the street tonight. Count how many are looking up. Count how many notice the architecture, the sky, the faces of the people they pass. Most of us move through the world like ghosts, half here and half somewhere else, always somewhere else. We carry the entire internet in our pocket. Every song ever recorded, every movie ever made, every book ever written, every thought every person has ever shared publicly. Infinite entertainment, infinite distraction, infinite escape from whatever moment we're actually living in. And we wonder why we feel empty. The promise was automation would free us. Machines would do the repetitive work, and humans could focus on what humans do best: create, connect, explore, love. But that's not what happened, is it? Instead, we created new kinds of work. We became the machine's caretakers. We learned to think like algorithms, to optimize ourselves like software, to measure our worth in metrics and engagement rates and productivity scores. We got more efficient, but we didn't get more free. I know a man who runs a small business. 20 years ago, he could close his shop at 6, go home, have dinner with his family, and not think about work until morning. Now his customers expect instant responses. His suppliers send urgent emails at midnight. His social media needs constant attention, or his business disappears. He's always working, always available, always on. The technology was supposed to make his life easier. Instead, it dissolved the boundary between work and life entirely. This is the peace they promised us? This constant state of partial attention, of digital tether, of always being a notification away from the next task, the next crisis, the next demand on our consciousness. Look at how we connect now. We share moments by photographing them instead of living them. We express love through heart emoji and likes. We have more ways to communicate than ever before, and somehow we're losing the art of conversation. When was the last time you had a conversation that lasted more than a few minutes without someone checking their phone? When was the last time you sat with a friend in comfortable silence, not because you ran out of things to say, but because you were content just being together? We've become afraid of silence, afraid of stillness, afraid of being alone with our thoughts. So we fill every moment with noise, with stimulation, with the illusion of activity. But peace isn't found in noise. Peace comes from stillness, from presence, from the ability to be where you are, when you are there. They told us progress meant efficiency, and efficiency meant more time for what matters. But here's what they didn't tell us. Once you optimize everything, there's always something else to optimize. Once you make everything faster, everything else feels too slow. Once you make everything convenient, inconvenience becomes unbearable. We save time on so many small things, but somehow we have less time than ever for the big things, for deep conversations, for quiet reflection, for slowly getting to know someone, for letting thoughts develop naturally instead of grabbing the first answer Google gives us. Progress promised us more, but it gave us faster. And faster isn't always better. I'm not against technology. That would be foolish and hypocritical, since you're probably watching this on a device that didn't exist when your grandparents were young. The tools themselves aren't evil. The internet connects people across continents. Smartphones let us capture and share beautiful moments. Medical technology saves lives that would have been lost just decades ago. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being intentional about how we use these tools. We stopped asking whether each new convenience was worth what it cost us in attention, in presence, in peace. We started using technology, and then technology started using us. The attention economy. Have you heard this phrase? It sounds clinical, doesn't it? Almost innocent. But it describes something profound and troubling. A system built on harvesting human attention and selling it to the highest bidder. Your attention is valuable. More valuable than you probably realize. Companies spend billions of dollars studying how to capture it, how to hold it, how to direct it toward whatever they want you to buy or believe or do. They've learned to trigger the same neural pathways that once helped our ancestors survive. The fear of missing out, the craving for social approval, the dopamine hit of novelty. These were useful when we lived in small tribes and faced real physical threats. But now these same instincts keep us scrolling, clicking, consuming, always, looking for the next hit of stimulation, the next piece of information, the next social validation. We're not choosing to be distracted. We're being distracted by design. And what about the children growing up in this world? They've never known silence, never known boredom, never had to sit with uncomfortable feelings without immediately seeking digital comfort. They're learning to think in fragments, to communicate in abbreviations, to experience the world through screens. Their brains are being wired differently than ours were. More reactive, more distractible, more dependent on external stimulation for basic contentment. Is this progress? Or is this the slow erosion of human capacity for deep thought, sustained attention, inner peace? Don't misunderstand me. I'm not romanticizing the past. Life was harder in many ways before all this technology. People died from diseases we can cure with pills. Communication across distances was slow and unreliable. Access to information was limited to those with resources and education. Progress has solved real problems. It's reduced suffering in measurable ways. It's given voice to people who were previously silenced. It's connected families separated by geography. It's democratized knowledge and opportunity. But progress isn't free. Every solution creates new problems. Every tool changes the person who uses it. And we've been so focused on what we're gaining that we've barely noticed what we're losing. The promise was that technology would make us more human, free us from drudgery so we could focus on what makes life meaningful. Art, relationships, exploration, contemplation, play. Instead, we've become more like the machines we created. Always processing, always responding, always optimizing. We measure our days in completed tasks instead of moments of beauty. We value efficiency over meaning, speed over depth, connection over presence. When did we start believing that busy was the same as important? That available was the same as valuable? That informed was the same as wise? I think about peace often these days. Real peace, not just the absence of obvious conflict. The kind of peace that comes from being fully present in your own life. From knowing who you are when you're not performing for an audience. From being comfortable with yourself when the notifications stop and the entertainment ends and you're left alone with your thoughts. That kind of peace feels rare now. We've created a world where being alone with your thoughts feels like punishment instead of refuge. Where silence feels empty instead of full. Where stillness feels like stagnation instead of rest. We've forgotten how to be bored. And in forgetting that, we've forgotten how to be creative. Real creativity comes from the space between thoughts, from letting the mind wander, from having time to make unexpected connections. But we don't leave space anymore. We fill every gap with content, every pause with stimulation, every moment of potential boredom with digital entertainment. The irony is that we have more access to beauty than any generation in history. We can see art from every culture, hear music from every tradition, read wisdom from every age. But we consume it so quickly, so superficially that it barely touches us. We see a sunset and immediately think about how to photograph it instead of how it makes us feel. We visit a beautiful place and focus on documenting our presence there instead of actually being present there. We experience life through the lens of how we'll share it, not how we'll remember it. This isn't peace. This is performance. And performance, no matter how polished, is exhausting. Sometimes I wonder what we could accomplish if we could focus the way our grandparents did, if we could read a book for hours without checking our phones, if we could have a conversation without the itch to multitask, if we could work on something difficult without immediately searching for easier alternatives. What problems could we solve? What art could we create? What relationships could we build? What inner worlds could we explore? But that requires something we've almost forgotten how to do. Paying attention to one thing at a time. Being fully present in one moment, with one person, on one task. It sounds simple, but try it. Try reading for an hour without any digital interruption. Try having a meal without checking your phone. Try walking somewhere without listening to anything, just experiencing the walk itself. It's harder than it should be. And that tells us something important about what we've lost. But here's what gives me hope. Human nature is deeper than any technology. Our need for genuine connection, for meaning, for peace. These needs don't disappear just because we have new distractions. They go underground for a while. They get buried under notifications and obligations and the relentless pace of modern life. But they're still there, waiting for us to remember them. And more people are starting to remember. They're putting their phones in other rooms when they sleep. They're taking walks without podcasts. They're having device-free dinners. They're choosing boredom over constant stimulation. They're rediscovering what peace actually feels like. Progress isn't evil. Technology isn't the enemy. But we need to be more intentional about how we let them shape our lives. We need to remember that just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Just because something is convenient doesn't mean it's worth the cost. We need to ask harder questions. Not just, how can this make my life easier? But how will this change who I am? Not just, what can I gain? But what might I lose? Most importantly, we need to remember that the best things in life can't be optimized. Love takes time. Friendship requires presence. Creativity needs space. Peace demands stillness. These things don't fit well into our hyper-connected, always optimizing world. But they're what make life worth living. They told us progress meant peace, and in their vision of the future, maybe it did. But their vision and our reality are different things. Progress brought us many gifts, but peace wasn't one of them. That doesn't mean peace is impossible. It just means we have to choose it, consciously and repeatedly, in a world designed to distract us from it. We have to create islands of stillness in the ocean of noise, moments of presence in the stream of distraction, spaces for depth in a culture of surfaces. This isn't about rejecting the modern world. It's about living in it more thoughtfully. It's about using our tools instead of being used by them. It's about remembering that we're human beings, not human doings. The city will keep humming its electric song. The screens will keep glowing. The notifications will keep arriving. But we can choose how to respond. We can choose when to engage and when to step back. We can choose presence over productivity, depth over speed, being over seeming. We can choose peace, even in a world that profits from our restlessness. The question is, will we?